get into in hour number two how some people are interjecting politics in this with our guests coming in. But let's start from square one because I haven't spoken to you about this case on the air. What was your first reaction when you heard about this case and you heard that Tellis had been arrested?
Well, I was just glued to the TV before he even got arrested. You know, the reporters were camping out outside his house. Because they came and got his maroon Denali first.
Right.
And they're like, okay, there's something's going on here. And of course, all the media is all over it because this guy, Jeff Harmon, I mean, he was really well respected amongst all the reporters.
He was.
And he was an investigative reporter and he investigated a lot of politicians. But I looked at it and I go, man, I know he's run some stories on Tellis. You know, he ran a big story on Tellis where they got footage of him basically allegedly, let's say it again, because we don't know what was happening in that car, but you know, that car was a rocking. You don't come a knocking. Robert Tellis was in there with an employee of his. There was a lot of allegations going on at his public administrator position, and he got killed in the primary. And so he essentially lost his job because of it. I'm sure his relationships, his reputation, everything, because of these stories that broke out. But that's what you accept when you take a public position as an elected official. You accept that kind of scrutiny. But man, I just said, God, he had all the motive to do it. And then as the evidence started shaking out, and they said, well, we came to get his truck. We got a search warrant because that truck was seen near the scene of the crime, the murder. And they had surveillance footage showing somebody in a complete murder suit, you know, yellow top, the gloves duct taped, you know, everything you would do to try and stop yourself from leaving any kind of DNA or trace at the scene. But what I've heard, and we don't know till the evidence shakes out, but what I've heard is that Denali showed back up to the actual house with the license plate removed. It's a maroon Denali.
Yeah.
Nobody has maroon Denali.
And by the way, RJ reporters are some of his colleagues were the ones that tipped off police with the car situation. I can't imagine. And by the way, they've done a great job in having a report on something where they lost one of their friends, one of their colleagues. They've done a fantastic job. I think the local news coverage here in Las Vegas has been very good. I think some of the national coverage has not. I'll get to that. So, yeah, I mean, he gets arrested. He tries to harm himself. Let's go back to when they interviewed Tellis, because I had some criticisms, and maybe you could help me out with this. My understanding is they were waiting for DNA evidence to come back.
Oh, man, they rushed the DNA in the case. The first thing you do when you find a body in a homicide is you go under the fingernails.
Right.
Because people like to defend themselves when they're getting killed or even in a fight.
Right.
And so you're trying to find the perpetrator, you go under the nails for the DNA. Now, DNA usually takes a long time. So they put a mad rush on this to even get it a few days after the fact to get DNA. But they did not have a match in the database for that DNA when they got it, right?
Oh.
There's a CODIS database. Whenever you get arrested or you get convicted of a crime, they get your DNA and they store it. Okay, so if you ever commit another crime in the future, your DNA shows up, they know they have you on file. This wasn't on file. Well, they already have Tellis identified as a suspect. They get a search warrant for his DNA. That's when they go pick him up, and they're gonna get his DNA. And then they also bring him back to the station, and they try to get a statement from him, see if the guy's gonna confess. You know, you see another first 48 hours, that kind of thing. Detectives go in there and try to elicit confession. So there was a lot of flack given, I saw in the media, towards the DA's office and Steve Wolfson and Metro, going, why was he not arrested? Why was he allowed to walk out of that police station when you had this mounting evidence on him? Well, there's a real good reason for that. It's an investigative technique. Okay, police can interrogate you in custody, but they have to Mirandize you. And if you invoke your right to counsel at that point, you have to get a lawyer. But if you're not in custody, they can interrogate you. You don't have Miranda rights at that point, right?
Right.
So they don't have to even read you Miranda. And so there's all these factors that go into determining whether you're in custody for purposes of Miranda later. Is your confession going to be admissible? And these cops are trained to go, look, if you got a case against someone and you really want to make sure that your statement, that confession or statement from that defendant is going to be allowed in court, one of the key moves you can do is let him walk out of that police station not arrested.
Okay, but Thomas, let's back. What you're saying again makes complete sense. I get it. But here's my concern. I'm sure there was somebody that was tailing him. I'm sure they told him not to go anywhere. Don't leave the city, go home. I'm sure they told him all that stuff. With that being said, you terrorized the neighborhood, shut down the neighborhood. He tried to kill himself. He certainly could have killed himself, could have harmed somebody else. What if his family was home? What if somebody was home? What if he decided to go on a killing spree? I understand what you're saying with respect to the investigation and that technique. I don't discount what you're saying, and I'm sure that's exactly why they did what they did. I believe if you have that mounting amount of evidence. They could have easily arrested him there. They had so much evidence already.
Well, they didn't have the DNA at that point.
Didn't need it, though, to arrest him. You had overwhelming evidence. You had video. You have him on video committing the crime, by the way. They said, Lombardo said they have video of him actually committing the crime, not just him going in and going back. You have his car. You have a video of him clearly going in there. They could have absolutely arrested him. My issue, again, is this. You had to shut down a neighborhood. You terrorized the neighborhood. He tried to kill himself. Luckily, he wasn't successful. And I know some people are going to disagree with me. Oh, I wish he did kill himself. I understand why people feel that way. If somebody was home, who knows what he could have been capable of? Officers already know. The investigators know this guy, 99% committed murder. He's capable of killing somebody else. I have a problem with this investigative technique. And by the way, I end up right because the guy did try to commit suicide. He did try to harm himself. You know, I mean, I'm glad he didn't. I'm glad he's seeing his day in court, even though the scumbag had a smirk, on his face today. And we'll get to the court proceeding today, which was very short. I don't like this investigative technique because I think it puts people at risk. It puts the community at risk. It put the neighborhood at risk. It put people in Las Vegas at risk, even if somebody was tailing him.
Well, anytime somebody's let out of custody or not arrested, you can make that argument that everyone's at risk. Okay,
but this is a murder we're talking about here. We're not talking about
this is a murder. But one thing about Tellus murdering Harmon is that there was motive there, right? And he doesn't have this criminal history that shows he's this threat to the community. And I'm going to say this. I understand what you're saying, like protect the community, but you're building a murder case. And these homicide detectives, a lot of times, they're not arresting people right when the crime happens. Why? They're actually putting an investigation and a case together before they make the arrest. Because once you make the arrest, the clock starts ticking on everything.
Okay, but Thomas, what happens if he does hurt or kill somebody else? There's going to be blame on Metro Police for letting him out in the first place. That absolutely could have happened. I'm glad it didn't.
That's a lot of what ifs for something that didn't happen.
The guy committed a murder.
I'll tell you this.
He tried to kill himself.
Here's the other thing. You think just because you arrest him, he's not getting out of custody? You must not be paying attention to what's happening here in Clark County. There's been bail reform movements all over the country, bail reform movements here in Clark County, bail reform statutes passed by the legislature. Everyone's getting out of custody nowadays. Now, the only crime you can commit where you're actually able to be held with no bail is murder, first-degree murder. But in order to be held no bail, you have to prove to the court at the bail hearing, which is going to happen the next day because of the new statutes that have been passed. You have to prove that the evidence, the presumption is great, and that the evidence is there to show that they actually committed the murder. And if you're going and you don't even have DNA and all you have is a video of his car near the scene.
No, they also have video of him killing him.
He wasn't unmasked. There's a masked perpetrator. You can't tell.
You got his car there.
All you have is a guy in a mask, and then his car happens to be near that location.
You got his clothes. You got his clothes that he was wearing that he cut up. What more do you want?
I don't believe they had his clothes at that time. They hadn't searched his house yet.
Oh, yes, they did.
You know,
they took his car at that time. Yes, they did.
But all I'm going to say is this: you're assuming you're going to go in front of that judge in 10 hours at the very initial stages of the case and be able to prove to that judge that your case against this guy is so rock solid, this guy stays in custody. Well, if you don't meet that threshold in front of that judge, and that judge says, well, no, I'm going to say we're not going to hold him no bail. So the question becomes how much bail is appropriate. Well, guess what? Someone like Robert Tellus, who's presumed innocent, who doesn't have a criminal history like that.
He does.
He's got a domestic violence from last year. Let's not paint this as this is a guy who's got these gang affiliations and been doing robberies for 10
Thomas,
years.
this is where we disagree. I don't think you have to have a past criminal history when you have mounting evidence that you just killed somebody.
When it comes, that's what you're saying, mounting evidence. But you're walking in front of a judge and you're saying detain him no bail. Mm-hmm. If that judge sits there and says, I don't see you presenting all this evidence that it's definitely him. I see you have some stuff here. Your investigation is still ongoing. I understand that. But for purposes of bail today, you haven't met that threshold. So now I'm not going to hold him no bail. I'm going to set bail. And now all the judges and what's going on in Clark County right now and in Vegas is that they're going, well, before we set any kind of monetary bail, we need the state to prove that why can't we just put him on house arrest right now? Why can't we do that? And then if you can do that, not require him to post monetary bail, or say, what kind of monetary bail are we posting? 50,000, 100,000, he'll be out. So now that they've actually put the case together, they took a few more hours. They got their statement. They got their DNA. Now when they go in front of that judge this morning, they didn't even want the bail hearing to be had. the defense, right? Because they already know proof is evident. The presumption is great that you committed this crime. You're going to be held no bail. You're in custody until you get sentenced on this case, because it is going to be a slam dunk.
Right.
And so they had a decision to make at that point, right? And so you have, as soon as you make the arrest, the clock starts ticking. I'll tell you, there's an example. We had a murder case a few years ago, and we needed to get some brain testing done. We had to send that out to a lab 2 states away.
Yeah.
And the trial was already coming by because the guy invoked speedy trial rights. And Judge Herndon was like, the state's not ready to go to trial. Like, no, we're still waiting on these results from this testing before we go to trial. And Judge Herndon said, man, you know, the clock starts ticking. Before you arrest somebody and file formal charges, you guys need to have your ducks in a row. You can't fire your shot and not be ready to close in 60 days, because the defense can push that quickly for trial. And so I don't blame these guys for taking a couple extra moments to make sure everything was right. When the DNA testing came back onto the fingernails of the victim, then it was like, okay, go put the cuffs on this guy.
Okay. Again, I hear what you're saying, but the bottom line here is he had an opportunity to kill himself, and he attempted to do so. Yes, I'm glad he didn't try to harm anybody.
He still has
else.
an opportunity to kill himself. He's in custody.
A little bit more difficult when you're in custody, and he might be on suicide watch. I don't know. Here's what I do know. They let him out, and we can talk about the legalities, and you're making a lot of sense. I understand what you're saying. But the bottom line here is he almost took his own life. He attempted to do so. That's not good.
Let me ask you this. Since we're playing what ifs, what if they brought him in for that statement?
Yes.
They got his DNA sample. They tried to match it up to what was under the fingernails, and it was not a match. The DNA under Harmon's fingernails was some other assailant.
I'll give you an answer. Here's the worst thing that would have happened. He would have been behind bars for a couple days. Not World War III. A lot of people are put behind bars for a couple days. It's not the end of the world. Could he have maybe had some sort of lawsuit?
Well, no. Well, hold on.
Probably not.
Hold on.
Let him get.
He's under arrest for the charge. We're not saying he didn't do it. We're saying the DNA came back as a match to somebody else.
If the DNA comes back as a match to somebody else, then you reevaluate the case and maybe you put bail on him or maybe change the charges. But what's the worst thing that happens there?
Well, no, you keep him charged, but now you've started the clock on the case.
Yes.
And now you're saying, well, now there's this exculpatory evidence that at trial, is there a reasonable doubt that it's him?
Yeah.
Let's put a couple more pieces together before we arrest this guy.
Understood.
Right?
But Thomas, we're not talking about a guy getting the electric chair and then all of a sudden we realize he didn't commit the crime. What's the worst thing that could have happened? Well, if you let him go, the worst thing that could have happened is he could have killed a bunch of people or killed himself. He did try to do that. What's the worst thing that can happen if that happens, what you're talking about, the DNA? He spends a couple days in jail. Maybe he wouldn't have done that if they knew the DNA was different. Who cares? I mean, listen, when it comes to...
No, what I'm saying is the DNA comes out different.
I understand.
Then they're going, well, we know he's good for it, right?
Yeah.
We're putting the case of the evidence is starting to come together. We're investigating. The DNA is not going to be the route we're going to be able to convict him. We need to do some other things. Let's go grab his phone records. Let's go do these things that take a little bit more time before we actually commit to filing charges on this guy.
Right.
And I can't fault them for that. They rushed that DNA. When the DNA came back, they were like, this is go time. And this is a slam dunk prosecution as far as the evidence. And man, it's a crazy case, and I know the whole nation's going to follow it.
It is, well, the whole nation is. I mean, it's been on every national network, and certainly everybody's covering it. I don't like.
I'll make a prediction right now.
Okay.
DA prosecutor Mark DiGiacomo will be prosecuting this case. He's like the all-star homicide prosecutor down there, and anytime like a really compelling case comes forward that's got some national attention, oh man, he snatches it up. You know, baby prosecutor like me, when I used to be there, I used to ask to get on those cases. Oh, no, I'm handling this one myself. You know, and so Mark's going to put the pedal to the metal, and this guy will be convicted. It could take a couple years, though.
Okay, so let me ask you, based on what we know, obviously there's no death penalty on the table here, right?
Well, they'll evaluate it, but
it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Okay, so give me your answer here. What do you think the prosecution is going to ask for, and what do you think in the end he's going to get?
You know, I could see this case going life without, but they'll have to take him to trial for it. But I could see the DAs wanting to go to trial on this case. You know, this is a case that you actually want to get in front of a jury because it's got everything that you need. It's got the jury appeal. You got the violence here. You got the motive, right? But when death isn't on the table, you can't get a guy just to agree with a life without. That's his worst case scenario at trial. You're going to have to go to trial. So if they want to conserve resources If they don't want to go to trial, maybe there's some issues with some of the evidence in the case, these technical constitutional violations on the search. There could be. That's what defense attorneys are looking at. Then maybe a warrant's going, okay, we can't get him for life without. Maybe we can get him to agree to, a lighter sentence. Now, a lighter sentence, I would say 10 to 25 on the murder, plus for the deadly weapon, another 10 to 25. Maybe he'll end up doing 20, 25 before he even gets eligible for parole.
I have a problem with that. And again, you're speaking legalities, which I appreciate. I'm just giving you my opinion as an outsider looking in. This was premeditated. He knew what he was doing. We've learned that he staked this poor guy, Jeff, out in front of his house, waited for him. He knew what he was doing. The motive is there. This isn't a crime of passion. Not that that would be an excuse to kill somebody either, but you understand this was premeditation all the way. This was a guy who brutally executed and murdered this poor man who did nothing wrong other than his job, a good journalist who I knew. Didn't know him very well, but he's been on my show a few times. Always was nice to me. I've heard so many nice things about him said by so many people that I know in this community.
It's the definition of premeditated murder.
Right. And that is why I say that I believe he should be put to death. Now, the argument can be made that it's more expensive when you put somebody on death row, and it could take 40 years. Understand that. And I also understand some people saying, like me, I don't want this guy enjoying, I guess that's one way of putting it, 3 meals a day, being able to watch TV and being able to exercise. If you want to put him in a 4x4 room and give him 1 meal a day and 1 cup of water every day for the rest of his life in a cushioned room, you go ahead and you do that, and I have no problem with that. But we know that's not how he's going to be treated. And I'm not saying it's a vacation either, what he's going to be going through. What I am saying is I do not believe he deserves to be alive. I don't believe his heart deserves to be beating. This is where I believe in the death penalty. I agree with a lot of people on the right when it at least comes to this issue. I have always been pro-death penalty. I want these bastards off the planet. I want them going to hell. I want Tellus going to hell. I'm sorry to his wife and his kids who, my understanding, did absolutely nothing wrong. They're victims here as well. But Jeff's family should also have some say in this. And I don't like it how the victims don't have much say.
So the way the death penalty works is this, and I sat in a lot of death penalty committee meetings.
Mm-hmm.
You get a murder case, it will go in front of the death penalty committee at the DA's office, and they'll look at everything. And there's a big report done by the prosecutors, and there's aggravators and mitigators.
Right.
And aggravators are things that are tending to lean towards, yes, let's approve this for death penalty prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
And there's mitigators, which is like, okay, are there things that happen in this guy's life, such as a tough childhood growing up, these kind of situations, drug use, those kinds of things are mitigators. Aggravators are your criminal history. How violent have you been in the past? Are you just irredeemable? But even if you approve it for the death penalty, when you go to trial, the judge doesn't get to decide. You then have to get the jury to then vote unanimously to give him the death penalty. And that's a tall order because there's a lot of people who don't believe in the death penalty here. And even if you get a jury full of people who say, we will consider the death penalty in a case, after you convict him, you have a whole separate phase of death penalty proceedings where the prosecutors are arguing for death and the defense is saying, no, give him life without. Right. And you have to get a unanimous decision on that. And it's seldom that comes through. Now, this is a very heinous crime. Like you said, the premeditation. I can see a lot of jurors agreeing with what you're saying.
Yeah.
But that's why the DA's office at the end of the day will kind of when they're pursuing the death penalty, it's more of a bargaining chip to get somebody to agree to life without. In this case, I don't know his history personally, but just from looking at it, I looked at his criminal history online. I don't really see these aggravators that are there besides what happened in this particular case, the facts of this case. And so I could see Wolfson in the DA's office saying, no, we're not going to pursue the death penalty here.
It is interesting. We got to take a break, but you bring up a good point there. Yes. Was he a bad guy before this? Yeah, he wasn't a good guy. Cheated on his wife. We certainly know that. That's obvious. Not a good husband, probably not a very good father, didn't treat his employees very well. But with that being said, there's a fine line between that and murdering somebody. So I want to talk a little bit about that when we come back. I want to talk about his family life with you a little bit. And, there are some people that are going after his wife, which I think is completely unacceptable. And I want to talk about that and defend her as well. And then I want to get to his court appearance today, and I want you to kind of break that down legally, what's going on there. He's Thomas Moskal, the former Las Vegas DA. I am Brian Shapiro. We'll also open up the phone lines at 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you want to be a part of the conversation, 702 221-7283. We'll take a quick break. And as I mentioned, coming up in hour number 2, journalist for the Red State, Brittany Sheehan, will be joining us. Take a quick break. Be back right after this. You're listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP.
Hey, everybody. Are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premium Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super. Hero, that is. Because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
Look, it's impossible for the average person to find a great attorney out there. There's so much misinformation. Now, let me introduce you to former Chief Deputy District Attorney Thomas Moskal. He was Las Vegas's top DUI prosecutor for years. He prosecuted the most high-profile DUI cases in Clark County. No one knows more about DUI law in Nevada. Just Google it. If you get charged with DUI, whether it's a misdemeanor or even more importantly, a felony, you need Thomas Moskal representing you. His relationships with the prosecutors and judges, and his knowledge of DUI law to work for you. So give him a call now or text him at 702-848-5555. It's your life and liberty that's at stake. Don't wait. Call now. That number again, 702-848-5555. I want to tell you guys about one of my favorite doctors in the Valley, Dr. K. She's a board-certified internal medicine physician. She's been in practice for over 20 years, went to Yale. She believes in treating body and mind as a whole by achieving harmony and balance. She offers hormone replacement, Botox, skin rejuvenation, even snoring treatment, because we know how that can be annoying from time to time. Also plasma treatments and so much more with cutting-edge technology. Please give her a call, 702-410-5779. You could also give her an email at cosmeticaesthetics.lv@gmail.com. Again, that number, 702-410-5779. Call Dr. K. Tell them I sent you, and I promise you won't be disappointed. Hey, everybody, it's Brian Shapiro from Pushing the Limits. I want to tell you guys about Sahara West Urgent Care and Wellness. They're conveniently located on the southwest corner of Sahara and Jones. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. At Sahara West Urgent Care, they'll take care of all your healthcare needs. They offer routine services such as physicals, STD testing, car accident treatment, and work injuries. You name it, they do it. They have on-site x-ray, EKG, ultrasound, and labs. They treat chronic conditions such as asthma, blood pressure, diabetes, and more. They also offer general wellness exams, treatments such as testosterone enhancement and cancer screening. They're located on Sahara, 6125 West Sahara Avenue. Their number is 702-248-0554. And the best part, they accept most major insurances and affordable cash pay prices, office visits starting at just $95. And I'm also a client. So please give them a call, 702-248-0554.
Hey, everybody. Are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premium Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super. Hero, that is. Because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Tuesday. So glad you could join us. Check out my friends, by the way, at Sahara West Urgent and Primary Care. They're located at Sahara and Jones. They got me on the testosterone therapy, and I got to tell you, it works, folks. I'm like 18 years old again. I'm like George Burns in 18 again. I'm telling you, it's awesome. I'm not that old, though. But 6125 West Sahara Avenue, $95 self-pay if you don't have insurance, but they take most insurances. I'm in and out of there in like 20 minutes, man. 702-248-0554, or you can check them out online at Sahara West Urgent Care We got the former Las Vegas DA in studio, Thomas Moskal, joining us, coming up here at the top of the hour. Brittany Sheehan's going to be joining us. He's a journalist for the Red State. Should politics be interjected into this story? Now, obviously, I say no, but we'll have that conversation coming up at the top of the hour.
I want to say, I've never heard somebody make a George Burns reference and the next sentence be like, I'm not that old. Just saying.
That's true. Well, George Burns.
I got the reference, though. So what does that say about me?
As long as I've been alive, and George Burns, passed away at a very old age, by the way. He had an unbelievable life. I don't know what George Burns was like at young, because he was always old when I was alive. So I don't know what a young George Burns looks like. But anyway, let's get back into this Tellis thing. Okay, so my first reaction, and maybe it's a wrong reaction, but when I hear that this guy Tellis got a domestic violence dispute, and he was allegedly doing sexual acts with a woman that he worked with in the back of his car, I say to myself, as a married woman with kids, why would you stick around with somebody like that? And listen, I understand that this is a personal issue and everybody has their personal reasons. I get that. So I question it. And then I go on her Facebook page, Tellis's wife. And at that time I was angry, and I was, getting emotion interjected in this, because a lot of people are not talking about Jeff and his family. They're talking about Tellis's family. And listen, they didn't do anything wrong. But at the same time, I say to myself, they didn't commit this murder. These poor kids that are now going to have to go through this knowing that their father's a murderer. These poor kids didn't do anything wrong. Beautiful wife. I don't think she did anything wrong. Maybe she had her reasons for staying with him. I don't understand why, but she did. And she's taking a lot of flack from a lot of people. And I think she just took down her Facebook page today because of it. There were some really nasty comments on there that I do not condone and I don't like. While I understand people are going to feel for his family, and that's fair, I tend to think about Jeff's family, because he's now 6 feet underneath the ground. I feel for him and his family, and I can't even imagine the brutal pain that he must have gone through the last moments of his life. I can't even imagine. Guy was stabbed everywhere. So I think it's both ways here. Okay, tell us his family. Kids are victims, no question. They're growing up without a dad now. And his wife, certainly, I can't imagine how difficult this must be on her. They didn't do anything wrong. But I tend to feel my sympathy more for the real victim's family. There's only one victim that's dead right now. Okay. Yes, the kids are victims. I get that. Wife is a victim. I get that. Jeff's dead. So I tend to think a little bit more about Jeff and his family and friends rather than Tellis's family. And I hear the argument, hey, Brian, there's more than one victim. Okay, just stop it with that. We know that. Stop it with that. That's my way of thinking here. I don't condone any nasty comments to Tellis's family. I don't think that's right. There's one person that's responsible for this. It's not Democrats. It's not Steve Sisolak. It's not his wife. It's not his kids. It's him. He's the person who did this. Jeff did absolutely nothing wrong. And by the way, even if there was a hit piece put out, which there wasn't, Jeff was a really good journalist. He did a really good job. He held people to fire on both sides of the aisle. He didn't play partisan politics. He held everybody to the fire. He was a good journalist, and he was respectful. He gave Tellis an opportunity in his articles to give his side of the story. And Tellis did, by the way. But even if it was a hit piece, which it wasn't, in my opinion, a hit piece to me is you're just going after somebody just for the reason of going after somebody. Jeff wasn't that kind of guy. It's fair. This guy, Robert Tellis, he is the one that's responsible. Nobody else is responsible. Nobody incited anything. It was 100% on him. Has nothing to do with politics, in my opinion, and we'll get to the top of the hour, but I don't want anyone going after this guy's family. They did nothing wrong. That's wrong. But I do ask the question, and I ask it in domestic violence situations, whatever the case may be. And I know victims have their reasons, and I get that, but it's just hard for me to wrap myself, Thomas, around the fact that why did this woman stay with him?
Well, I'm just going to completely speculate right now without any foundation whatsoever. But look, if you have a domestic violence arrest from pretty recent, and you got a guy who's willing to go and premeditate a murder and stab somebody to death and then show up in the court smiling about it this morning. I know I had a lot of experience with domestic violence victims when I was a DA, and they don't feel like they can leave. They don't feel like they can leave. And also, when I was a prosecutor, I'd say the people who had the most to fear from later on down the road when their abuser gets out of prison were these girls who were married or dating or had a kid with these abusive guys, right?
Yeah.
Because they literally are the type to come out and find their girl again and do whatever they need to do to be violent. It's a real fear, you know. I would tell some of the victims in my cases, I go, you know what? He's going to go away for 4 years or whatever it is, and you need to get out of the state. You need to go.
Yeah.
You stay off social media, stay off of those things. So
listen, you make
that's
a
pure
good
speculation.
Point. I understand, but you make a good point. And that's why I prefaced it by saying victims sometimes they have their reasons. Maybe she was scared. We don't know. And it is speculation, but it's a fair what you're saying. Some people,
I mean, from what he just did, I could definitely see him being the type of guy who says, if I can't have you, nobody's having you.
Very fair. Very fair. I think that's it's fair to make that assessment.
We always would, to domestic violence victims, we would always really congratulate them for having the courage to step up and leave and do those things. But as much resources we've tried to devote to helping women out of those situations, there really is nothing for them. The women in the worst situations, you send them over to Safe Nest or something. It's like, okay, they're staying down the street and the guy can still find them, even though they're not supposed to be able to. It's pretty easy. And you're only going to be able to stay here for a few weeks. And what are you supposed to do with your life at that point?
It's sad too that she will, the wife will always be defined as, oh, you're the guy who married the murderer. You know, she'll have that now for the rest of her life. Unfortunate. And then the kids will be like, that's my stepdad. Now, well, where's your real dad? You know, I would imagine they'll probably get that. Oh, he's in jail. What did he do? Kids did nothing wrong. It's unfortunate. It really is.
Well, what he did is he went and got vengeance. I mean, he felt like he was due revenge. And what I saw from the picture of him in court this morning.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. He shows up for arraignment. This morning. Yeah. They were supposed to try and file the complaint. They got the complaint. The charging document is ready. They filed it. He shows up and it's a very quick hearing because his attorney is just asking to continue the arraignment to next week, September 20th. And Robert Tellis is in the back just smiling with this grin in a situation that a normal person wouldn't be smiling. And all I could say to myself when I saw that is, this guy doesn't have remorse for what he did.
Not at all.
He feels like his life got ruined by Jeff Harmon, and he went out and exacted his own brand of justice on this guy, and he is gladly going to do his time. And that's what I saw on his face.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be some sort of psychopath you're right, to mentally deranged, first of all, to kill somebody, and then second of all, to show no remorse in court and to be smiling. He was smirking in court today. So tell me about the court appearance today. What happened in court today? Why was he there? And my understanding is his next court appearance will be a week from today.
It's a week from today. It's the same thing that happens in court all the time. And I feel for all the reporters that go up there. A whole lot of nothing happened. And it happened real quick, even though everyone was there to watch what was going to happen. And that's what defense attorneys do, is they try to continue things and start getting off the media, start trying to get off the media scent. So they're not on the trail of following the case. That's not going to be the case with this one. You could continue all you want. All he was supposed to do is appear today and say, hey, pleading not guilty, set the matter for a preliminary hearing.
Right.
But his defense attorney said, no, we're continuing the matter for a week for arraignment.
Okay.
And there could be multiple motivations for that. You know, I would tell you as a privately retained attorney now, a lot of times you're waiting on money to come through before I actually confirm and we get the arraignment going and we're going to start the case. Judge, give me a week.
Yeah.
You know,
well, listen, we can go back and we can talk about, obviously anybody who murders somebody is a psychopath.
And can I say, just because he's pleading not guilty, everyone pleads not guilty.
Sure.
If Robert Tellis walked into court this morning and the judge says, how do you plead? And he goes guilty. The judge would go, hold on, stop court. Right. Talk to your client. He can't just plead guilty right now. And so it's not even allowed to happen. Okay. And so I know people, I always hear this from non-lawyers. They always go, well, what's he even fighting? The evidence is mounting. It's like the judge would not even allow you to plead guilty if
People
you were,
don't know that.
if you were
yeah.
screaming up and down in court, said, I just want to take responsibility for what I did. I did it. The judge would go, stop talking. The prosecutors can use what you're saying right now against you at trial.
Can't the person who's up for murder or whatever say, I don't care, judge, I'm guilty?
They can.
Yeah.
But the judge, everybody's sitting there trying to protect the criminal defendant's rights right now.
All right. So we can talk about Tillis the murderer, and I'm not going to use the term allegedly because he is. His family can sue me if they like. But we know what a psychopath he is, and the smirking in court, and you're absolutely right. And let's talk about how stupid he is, okay? First of all, commits the murder, brings his own car to the crime scene, brings a knife. That's a weird object to use to murder somebody. Doesn't throw away his clothes. Instead, he's got blood on his shoe. He cuts part of his shoe off, cuts part of his hat off, doesn't put it in a dumpster somewhere, okay? Doesn't decide to put all the DNA evidence or something in a dumpster, keeps everything. I am mesmerized, and this is another topic. There are dumb criminals out there. Like, I remember that TV show, America's Dumbest Criminals. This guy would be right at the top of the list.
Well, this is the kind of case as prosecutors we'd sit around starting to look at the evidence, and you have to have a sense of humor when you're in this line of business, even though such a tragic event. But I just took me back to those days when you're saying it. We'd recount the evidence in some of the cases, and we're just laughing as we're talking about the case and what to do with it. And there's always, I really want to see his interview at the police station, because what they do when they're interrogating somebody is they don't let the perpetrator know that they're onto them to the extent they are.
Of course.
They're just saying, hey, your car was seen near the scene. They're just trying to get your explanation of things and trying to let you talk your way out of it.
Right.
And what you see in a lot of interviews is when people know that they're really caught out there, is they go to the route of saying, well, I would never be dumb enough to do all that. I mean, why would I drive my maroon Denali near the scene if I knew I was going to kill somebody?
Did it even?
And we go, yeah, that is what you did, man.
Did it even cross his mind that people knew he had a beef with this guy, that he wouldn't be a suspect? He drives his own car there.
Well, I saw he had just tweeted out because Herman was going to run another story on him.
Yeah.
Even after he had lost the election. And that must have sent him over the edge to go, you're going to try and trash me even more? I already lost the election. And he threw some tweets out there. He didn't even delete the tweets before he went and did this.
His Twitter's still up there.
It's still, well, at this point, it's like deleting them would look a little sus.
Yeah. I mean, it's still up there, but
yeah, I mean, so he cuts the top of his shoe off and keeps it.
And they still found blood on the shoe. And he cuts part of that weird hat he was wearing. What would you call that hat? It's like a hat that a gardener would wear, right?
It's like the sun hat.
Yeah. It's this big sun hat he's wearing.
What did you see
with
when
this orange jumpsuit, by the way?
If you could pull this up off of YouTube, I know Channel 8 did a little thing on it where they're showing him walking in that murder suit down the sidewalk on that surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
And then they show him a video footage of him walking at the public administrator's office on a regular work day. And he's got this very, very distinct gait when he's walking. And it's like, when you put them side to side, it's like, oh my God, you didn't even change the way you walked.
By the way, if you don't want to be noticed, you probably shouldn't wear like an orange suit to a murder. He's wearing this hat. He's standing out there with this orange jacket that he's wearing. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, dummy, like if you're going to do a horrible crime, which I never want anybody to do, by the way, I'm wondering why you'd wear an outfit like that. Some of like what he looked like, one of those construction worker outfits, like where they want to be noticed. That's why you wear orange, construction workers, so they're noticed. You literally wear a color like that so drivers can see you on the road.
Was it bright yellow?
Yeah, it was like a bright
orange.
Yeah, bright
like neon orange.
It's the type of person you'd see working on the roads.
Even at night. You would see this guy.
Oh yeah. There's another little tidbit. He commits the murder during the day. In daylight.
That's right. It was broad daylight.
I mean,
but then he leaves the scene, gets back in his maroon Denali, and then he comes back to the scene.
Right.
As if he forgot something that was there.
Why did he go back?
He must have forgotten something, some piece of evidence. Because, he had this was such intricate plan to dispose of all the evidence, as we've just been mentioning. He had to go back and clean one last thing up, Oh, man. This is a case that is going to be a national story all the way through.
Oh,
You know,
sure. We're
a
going to see
public
more.
official doesn't get elected. He's blaming the reporter, and then he goes and does a premeditated murder in this fashion. And the way he did it was so stupid. I mean, they even said on his cell phone, like they pulled some records and they see, oh, his cell phone was powered off for that 2 hour, 3 hour window during the murder. Because that's the first thing you think is, well, they're going to be able to get my cell phone records and my GPS records.
You know,
So you
turning it
turn it
off
off.
doesn't do anything.
Well, turning it off is pretty suspect, right?
Right.
So maybe you would, I don't know, go somewhere and leave your cell phone
Leave your
there.
cell phone at the house. Why would
Yeah.
you bring it with you if you're turning it off? They can still check to see where you were.
Well, how else is he going to get to the scene of the crime to commit the murder? Was he going to Uber over there? His Uber records, you know?
Uber
So,
records.
Man.
I mean, what a dummy.
Like I said, Mark DiGiacomo, he loves to get hold of these slam dunk prosecutions that are real sexy cases to prosecute.
Yeah.
And he's going to have a field day with this
Yeah.
one.
And obviously, you know, I go back to it. I go back to, we cannot forget the life that was lost and somebody who was so well respected in this community and a really, really good journalist. Listen, there are some people at the RJ that I don't like very much. Yeah, it doesn't mean I'm going to go after them with a knife, by the way. I just don't like them. I don't think they're good people. Jeff is not one of those people. He was a good guy, and he's been doing this for a very, very long time, dating all the way back to the Jerry Tarkanian days when he did some really good investigative reporting, and he was fair. Something we don't see in the media today in most cases. Partisan, going after one side of the aisle. I can't stand that. Jeff was fair. If it was time to go after Michelle Fiore, he went after Michelle Fiore. If you're going to go after Steve Sisolak for something, fine. But he was fair about it. Very similar to John Ralston, by the way, who I love having on this show because he's fair. I don't want to interject politics in this, and
There's nothing political about it except for the fact that he lost his political position because there was stuff coming, not to say he would have won even if the bad stuff didn't come out in the media.
Yeah.
But look, he had his employees were talking to the media about he's not doing a good job at work, that he's sexually harassing, that he's showing favoritism towards employees of his that he's having sexual relations with. This is all what's coming out in the reports. And so, the motive was there. It's just unbelievable. When my eyes were glued to the television screen when they were outside his house.
How do you take
before
it?
They ever arrested him? I went, can this even be real?
How do you take it though from, boy, I hate this guy, he's a piece of garbage, to I'm going to kill him? And by the way, somebody went on our social media page this hour and said, why don't you get Tillis's wife on? First of all, she's not going to be doing any interviews. She's going through definitely the worst days of her life right now. You think she's going to go on and listen, I would love to talk to her, but we also have to understand that she's grieving as well. And what her and her family are going through, I can't imagine either. She's not going to publicly do any interviews. She's going to be private. I don't blame her for doing that. At some point, if she decides to speak out, which she probably will not publicly, and again, I don't blame her, then I would love to talk to her and ask her if there were any warning signs. What did you see from him behavior? Listen, I had Andre Haynes on, who knew Tillis. He came on last week, and he said they saw warning signs, that his wife saw warning signs in an interview that Tillis did, that she said something wasn't right with this guy. Looks like he's going to implode. So people that knew him knew that something wasn't right, but you can think something's not right. Doesn't necessarily mean you think that they're going to murder somebody. You know what I mean? Those are two completely different things. And if she decides to speak to the media, which she has no obligation to, and she won't have to, but if she decides to do that, then sure, I would love to talk to her as I would talk to anybody.
It'd be real interesting to see what her perspective and what her experience with him was.
Yes.
I think that's going to be a real interesting take.
Yeah. I mean, she might have to go up there in the stand. She might be a part of this thing. So,
but I'm going to say this. They need to go hard on him.
Yeah.
I don't believe this is a death penalty case. It doesn't meet the threshold, the criteria, but they need to go hard on him. You cannot have political officials who are publicly elected.
Yes.
Doing revenge killings on journalists.
Agree.
Well, it just can't be stood for. I mean, I'm not saying that there's any murders that are okay, but this is one from a societal perspective.
Agree.
That you definitely drop the hammer on.
Couldn't agree with you more. And that's why, to me, the only thing that can happen here, to me, is life without the possibility of parole. You cannot I don't care if he's 90 years old. You cannot ever allow this guy ever a chance to be let out of jail. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Thomas is going to be sticking around in hour number 2, the former Las Vegas DA. Coming up next, a woman by the name of Brittany Sheehan. She's a journalist for the Red State. She is very politically active in Las Vegas, and she has interjected politics in her articles when it comes to this murder. I am going to ask her why coming up next. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You are listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP.